Hello, welcome to Energy Matters. As you know, I'm Vicky Delajoyo, and today is so special for me because I'm getting to introduce one of my favorite people on the planet, Phyllis Ginsberg, who's going to be talking to us about energy and how she thinks about it. So Phyllis Ginsberg is widely recognized as the survival to thrival expert and stands at the forefront of fostering personal transformation in the modern era. With a wealth of experience as an international speaker, best-selling author, and seasoned therapist, Phyllis has become a catalyst for authentic change in individuals seeking to transcend mere survival and embrace a thriving existence in the face of life's challenges. And I have to see, I've seen Phyllis do this with countless people, clients of mine that I've sent to her, people that I know. She really is the real deal, as they say. Her impact reverberates across numerous esteemed platforms, including her feature in the compelling documentary, The Courage to Continue, as well as prominent media outlets such as Women's World, CNBC, Parade, and Health and Wellbeing magazines. And her most recent book, Empowered You, Free Yourself from Generational Conditioning to Unleash Confidence, Happiness, and Resilience, Phyllis provides a transformative guide empowering individuals to break free from the constraints of the past and embark on a journey towards self-discovery and empowerment. Thank you so much for being here, Phyllis.
Oh, thank you for that introduction.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just thrilling for me because I am, as you know, a fan of this book. I really love it. I think that there's so much in there that is not only it has transformational possibilities, but I also find it very, very calming and centering when I read it because it allows me to make space for all of who I am. So one of the things you thought about when you were washing the dishes the other day, thinking about energy matters, was the energy of thought. So let's talk about what that means. When you think about energy of thought, how do you experience energy and what does that mean to you?
So we have about 60,000 thoughts a day, so they say, plus or minus. And those thoughts, most of them are out of our awareness. But if you pay attention to your thoughts, you can track what your energy's like. You could track, am I having a down day? Is my energy low? Am I having an up day? Is my energy enough to do all the things that I want to do? And our thoughts
Mm.
are that powerful that there is some research on that thoughts actually do carry energy.
Oh, I don't doubt it for a second. I don't doubt it for a second. That's why I love to wed sort of the inner dialogue with the movement of Qigong, because I think that when they'll go together, that's synergistic. And you are so good about looking at the energy of thoughts and really raising this up for people. How come? How did this happen? How did you become I mean, you're beyond an expert. You're really masterful with the work that you do.
Well, there's something about playing with words. There's certain words that will resonate with individuals, and a word can be triggering, a word can be inspiring. We all have our own like experience and meaning that we make of words based on our past, our history, our upbringing. And what I've noticed was if I use certain words with people that are positive and they're not ready for them, they're going to resist it because
Hmm.
it's out of their familiar, comfortable zone.
Well,
It's
can you give us an
fascinating.
example of something where where words had that kind of energetic, resonance where you recognize that?
Yes. Well, think about when you receive a compliment. What do you do with those words? A lot of us, like, we back up, we try and make it, diminish it, right? We don't own it. We don't say like, wow, thank you so much, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is that that only diminishes us, but I think the other thing it does is it diminishes the reciprocity between you and the person who's given you that compliment. Because if you don't receive it and you're not taking it in, that loop of reciprocity gets cut. Whereas if you say thank you, then it's giving something back. It's a way in which it's been received, and so that energy loop continues.
Correct. But imagine you're going about your day and maybe it's not a compliment, but you've got conversations going on either with work or your family or somebody significant in your life, and you're getting words that don't resonate with you. And so each time that you
Like what kind of words, when you say that, what kind of
like
words?
if somebody were to ask a favor of you and you're busy and you're doing something, and rather than saying, I can get to that after I finish these few things I'm working on right now. I need like another half hour, right? Generally, we don't talk that way. Some of us do, if you've got, like the foresight of that, but most of us will say, I got too much to do. I can't do it. Right? We go into stress. So now we've got stressful thoughts, and those carry a different energy.
Yeah, and then that becomes almost contagious or kind of, or at least self perpetuating.
Right. Not only have you now changed your physiology, you're running stress hormones, you might be in fight or flight, you've got more pressure on yourself, you're trying to maybe think, okay, how can I get all this done? How can I please everybody? And that's not doable.
Mm.
And then you've also created distance from the other person rather than an invitation of, okay, how can we make this work? It can't happen now, but maybe there's something that we can do that 20 minutes from now I'll be available.
Mm, mm. And even if not, to be able to say, I've got a lot going on right now. I'd love to come back tomorrow, even. It
Mhm.
doesn't even have to be in 20 minutes, right?
Right.
I noticed my stress started to go. It's like, well, what if it takes an hour?
And maybe it takes a week, right? But
Yeah.
but we don't generally like to say no to people
Mm.
if we're accustomed to pleasing others, making them
Accommodating.
happy, which is a big part of how all of us were raised. Like, how
Mm,
many times do you think you might have heard, make mom happy?
mm,
Don't upset mom, or your dad's unhappy. Go cheer him up, right? Like
mm,
as kids, we're put in those positions, which can be overly, it's a lot of pressure, but as a kid, you don't think about that. You just absorb it, you go do, but that's way too much to put on a child and then carry that into adulthood.
mm.
Uh,
Creates harm. It creates harm.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
that can last, which is really what your book is about. How we hear these messages as kids and we carry them forward. I remember one time when I first knew you, you talked about how you're basically you have your 5-year-old is running your businesses, I think is how you put it. That we have this. Could you explain a little bit about that? Because I've always absolutely, that was a wake-up call for me, and I really loved thinking about how the unconscious, I know you're already talking about it a little bit, but can you explore that a little more?
Sure. So our brains are like computers, so we are programmed or conditioned with messages from the time we're born until about 7, 8 years old, when we develop critical thinking and our brains work. And we can actually make decisions. Otherwise, we're just absorbing things. And so we're basically running this computer program in our adult lives as if we were a 5-year-old running our business, our relationships. Our whole lives are based on what we've been programmed with until we recognize either what's not working and we've made some changes, or we go on some kind of personal growth journey and we decide, like, oh, I don't want to be like my mom or my dad or my sister or my brother or my cousin or whoever, and I'm going to do something different on purpose.
It's so empowering to hear that. I know your book is called Empowered You, but it's so empowering to think that, instead of it's just me, to think that there's actually different choices, different choices that are not, because sometimes I think a lot of people think about personalities as being so ingrained that then they get stuck there.
Right. And the research is showing that our brains have the ability to change throughout our whole lives. We are not set in stone. You can change your personality by changing your thoughts, and those thoughts will then change your feelings. And energetically, you can change your whole physiology, your body chemistry. You can change an illness. I did a lot of healing, just like you did, energy healing. We both had broken wrists. And if it weren't for energy healing, I don't know how else that I would have healed in the ways that I could, because traditional physical therapy just wasn't, it
It's
wasn't
limited.
the right
It's
fit
limited.
for me.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I
was,
had the same thing as if I wasn't doing the Qigong. I mean, I know the Qigong and I was doing it very, very, I mean, intensely. I was really determined to get this wrist to heal quickly. And I know the energy healing was a really big part of why the surgeon was like, you look like you've been healing for 10 months instead of 3
Mhm.
when I went back for my post-surgery. Yeah.
When you,
So go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, when you think of it, of what we do in the context of energy and our thoughts that actually produce an energetic field, rather than forcing and trying to do and make something happen, now you have a greater sense of control. You're putting a vibration out, whether it's for healing or improving a relationship or your finances. It doesn't matter what it is, it works for everything when you're aligned with your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions.
Could you give an example of what it's like, what it's like for someone to not be aligned with their like thoughts, feelings, actions? What are I'm hearing heaven, human, earth there,
Yeah.
but but what when you speak about it in that way, what would be an example where somebody would have a thought that would be different from their feeling, that would be different from their action, where
So
it's not aligned?
right, if you have this thought, I'm going to reach a goal, and let's say the goal is something that could be realistic or unrealistic, right? So like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next week, or I'm going to eat healthy for the next 7 days, right? I mean, possible, maybe not. But if your goal is something that is unrealistic or on the verge of, well, it's not very realistic to think you're going to exercise every single day. You might need a day of rest. Putting pressure on yourself. And then even before you get started, your thoughts might be, I can do this. No, I can't. Right? There's this push pull, the thoughts of, well, I haven't been able to do it. I can't sustain it. I was working with a woman yesterday, and she said, yeah, I eat out a lot because of my work, and I can be really good when I'm at home, but then when I travel, I have to eat out and all these things. And she's trying to lose weight and it's not happening. And I said, what might you be able to do to think differently about this situation? Because until we think differently about a situation, you can't take action that's in alignment.
Yes, yeah. So, and then where do the feelings then come in? You
So
feel discouraged and you feel like I failed again. I
yeah,
or
all the self-doubt, self-criticism, self-judgment. I'm bad, I'm wrong, I can't do this, I'm never going to get there. I'm just going to be one big blob. Yeah, and then we can do a real number on ourselves mentally. And that
yeah.
doesn't serve anyone.
No, and it reactivates the harm that the little one is, in there still feeling. It's like it's proving once again that you're bad.
Right. And all of that we were conditioned with. We were
Mhm,
actually conditioned to be very limited
mhm.
as we were growing up. And so it does take some doing to learn to think differently, to broaden our repertoire of possibility thinking,
Yeah,
which we're not brought up with. Usually it's there's one right way to do it, and you got to do it my way. There's one right answer in school, and you got to get it right or else. And
yeah.
that's not the way the adult world lives and
No.
functions.
So one thing that really strikes me a lot when I mean, I love how what you're saying is so aligned to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, which I've been following forever, and I know that you're also inspired by his work. But what happens if you have a thought and you think, okay, I really want to shift that thought, you feel that commitment, and yet this keeps coming back. How do you interrupt that? You can have the best intention in the world to change your thoughts, and yet that unconscious is there, and you're maybe hearing it some of the time, but we know that 90% of the time or something like that, we're not even hearing it. So what do you do about how do you make it stick?
So interrupting the pattern is key. If you can know what the thought is or know what the feeling is, you can work with either of them. That would be a good place to start. But you can actually shift your energy, your thought. Um, I I call it working with the resistance, which is a gift. Anytime we have resistance, think of it as a gift because it gives you information to be able to make a different choice rather than just working in the dark. But
Mhm.
you can do qigong, you can listen to music, you can get some physical activity like dancing or running or
Being in
anything.
nature, yeah.
Right, being in nature, looking for your like happiest moments of the day,
Mhm.
which I always love sharing because anytime that we're looking for something happy, we can't be down and
Unhappy.
out at the same time.
Yeah, we don't have the capacity to hold those two things simultaneously, right? We can dance back and forth between them, but yeah.
And you definitely want to interrupt something that you can say, this doesn't feel right. I don't like the way I feel. Something needs to shift. I don't know what to do. And just having that inner dialogue, you can write it down, you can think it, and then you can ask yourself one question: what else is possible?
Mm. That sounds like such an important kind of default question to go to,
Hmm.
right? But what I was hearing you say is in some ways you need to be the first step is to be mindful to know that it's happening, because you were saying before that there are people who, you can't talk to them about possibilities when they're in a place where, they're underneath that surface or underneath that,
Right. When you're caught up in like
stress.
chronic stress,
Hmm.
anger, resentment, frustration, anxiety, when you're going through a panic attack, like any of that stuff, when you're deep down in depression, asking what else is possible is probably not something that you're going to think of because when we're in those states, we don't even remember we have tools or that we can ask ourselves one question.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So what happens then? What do you do then? It's just about then recognizing it.
Recognizing it, deciding. It's such a big thing to decide, I don't want to live like this anymore.
That's another default, I think. So one of the first ones is I don't want to live like this anymore, which then stimulates a little bit of like, well, what do you want? And all of those types of
Mhm.
things. And that's part of the pathway to being able to get to possibility thinking.
Right.
And I've seen you take people through that process with your tapped in community, where I've seen major breakthroughs and transformations for people through that work. Um, can you talk a little bit about how you got there? What you've done to interrupt, or an example of a moment in time where you experienced depression or you experienced anxiety and went into I don't want to be this, I don't want to do this anymore, because I think that's part of your journey of why you do what you do now.
Right. When I was in burnout, 2005, I can't believe that's going to be almost 20 years from now. It's just mind boggling. But I was working 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. I loved the work, but I said yes to way too much of it. And my niche was high conflict divorce. And so I just took whatever the courts gave me, appointed me to do. It was quite an honor to be appointed and, you know, judges' choices
You were requested, yeah.
yeah, I was very popular with the judges and attorneys, you might say. I did a good job marketing myself by showing up to court when no other mental health professional would. But yeah, so I really had a good time with that. And at the same time, I lost myself. I became stressed out over the deadlines. My body was not happy. All the things that sustain me, like meditation and exercise and spending time with friends and family, kind of dwindled by the wayside. And there was one day it was like, I can't do this anymore. And then I decided I am going to interrupt things in a big way, which was taking a sabbatical.
It's so interesting to me that you had something that you absolutely loved to do and felt good about doing, and at the same time, it was so stressful and so debilitating. It's an odd combination, right? A lot of times people are stressed because they don't like what they're doing. They
Mhm.
don't love it. They feel disconnected from it. They feel obligated because of whatever the requirements are. But with you, it was like, no, I love doing this. I feel honored to be the one that gets, you know, and yet at the same time, it burns you out. Can you say, but that seems like a big deal to me, right? Because it's unusual.
Yeah, but I think that when I look back in hindsight, I put pressure on myself to do what I thought I was supposed to do.
Mhm.
Like this is the underground work that I discovered after. Um, the money was great. I didn't have time to spend it, so saving it was wonderful. Like put it all in retirement. Thanks goodness. My husband, being a great financial advisor, did not put this at risk in the market. So I would have been probably really upset had I lot like had that money just disappeared
Oh, yeah.
downturn.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, to be earning in those years where earning matters so that you can save was a big to do. So I think there was more pressure on me. I put the pressure on me. I don't know that anybody else did to do it all.
Right, but you loved the work itself, and so did you grieve? Was there a grieving period about giving it up, or was just relief because, oh, you're going to take the pressure off, you're choosing to take the pressure off?
I was to the point where I was maxed out.
Mm,
And when I stopped working, I didn't realize the brunt of all that I was carrying because I was
mm,
churning out 2 child custody evaluations a month, plus like a whole uh, full practice of co-parenting and seeing kids from divorced families and all that fun stuff. So it took like 6 months to get families out of my head.
mm,
I could
mm.
not remember phone numbers. Like somebody would give me a phone number and I'm like, can you slow that down? I couldn't remember like 4 digits that somebody told me. My brain was like,
Overdrive.
uh, I was maxed out.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I did not grieve for the work. I didn't know what I would go back to doing. I
Mm,
kept my continuing education, which was a blessing because one of those uh, live events that I went to had somebody who was a brain specialist showing videos of what kids' brains look like when they live in a house with domestic violence.
mm. And you were very
And
used to those stories.
that's when I realized like there's something much better that I could be doing.
Mhm.
And it's like I had this light bulb moment, and that's when I started really diving into brain research,
And
pairing
positive
with the
psychology.
positive psychology
Yeah,
and the EFT tapping. And
yeah.
that's how I shifted my whole practice and what I do and the people that I work with. But
And in doing, oh, go ahead.
there was one day where I was thinking like, wow, what would it be like to work with people who weren't court ordered to see me? That just want to come and overcome whatever is getting in the way so that they can live happier, healthier lives.
Mm, mm. That's so beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and in that process, then you also did healing, in the process of learning and developing and researching, you also then were working on healing your own your own whatever tendencies to move into overwhelm or into stress, right? You were also working with whatever you had grown up with as a kid, the messages you had grown up with as a kid. Can you say a little bit about that?
It's amazing how how much that I had uncovered as far as that generational conditioning. One of the first things that I dealt with was all of the resentment that I had towards my mom, who she lost both her parents. They both died, I believe, of like heart disease or something health related in their early 40s. By the time she was 18, her parents both had died. She
Mm,
didn't deal with her grief.
mm,
She was angry, in pain. I believe that the emotional component of not dealing with that, of course, back then they didn't have the luxury of therapy, and that wasn't a like it wasn't a possibility. So I don't hold that against her. But I went through this grief process of I couldn't be who I needed to be because she couldn't give it to me. And I wrote down all the things I wanted for her that she didn't get growing up, that she
mm,
couldn't give to me.
mm. So healing her, or at least on a spirit level, as you were healing yourself. I
Right.
mean, I think that's one thing I know that when we do self-healing, we can reach back and heal through generations back, right? Then I think that that's part of the work that you do.
Right. Some of that shows up if people are open to it energetically. I think we're all connected, but I work in the here and now with people. But that was a real defining moment to let go of, like to identify, and then really forgive and be open to having a different, let's say, identity or a different view of myself in relation to my mom, rather than just almost like being the victim of the brunt of what she couldn't give me.
And so when you went from being the victim of the brunt of what she couldn't give you, what did that morph into? What's the identity
Uh,
now?
Freedom, uh, the ability to know that it wasn't my fault. I wasn't like I was the good girl, the one who did everything to try and avoid getting in trouble, but because my mom was in chronic pain and not as present and available, I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And when you're a little kid, you just do stupid stuff or you make a mess or you just don't know, and then you get in trouble for it. And I just couldn't figure out, why do I get in trouble and why is she mad at me and all these things. And so taking that into your adult life, wondering like, why are people mad at me or assuming that they're going to be mad at me if I'm not perfect, was
Mm.
one of the themes.
So
That
freedom from perfectionism is one of the things that you now live with, or you now have gotten to.
right. But all of these things like are intertwined in our subconscious, and it can really wreak havoc with our adult lives.
Mm, mm. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about your book, about Empowered You, in terms of either the process or what you want people to know about it?
So I have a copy right here. You
Good.
can see. And oh, let's see what might want to come from that. I can feel the energy of the book, which I didn't feel with the other two books that I've written. This one holds just an energy that's incredible. And okay, is there a message? My my guidance or intuition uh, will often come through with something real specific. And because there's so many things in that book, uh, let me just ask a few questions of myself.
Please take your time.
Okay, in the fourth section of the book, which is living and working together, the book actually goes through a process of, if we get ourselves individually feeling confident, happy, and resilient, then what happens for us, for humanity, for those who we coexist with, we live with, we work with, that's a big part of the essence of my work, is
Mm,
to bring peace and connection and the ability to get along.
mm,
After working with over, I want to say eight or 900 women and children through battered women's shelters, and then the high conflict divorce cases that I work with, I have seen what not getting along looks like.
mm,
Ugly, like
mhm,
the worst of the worst not getting along.
mm,
And I'm just feeling this now, that that is a huge essence of this work.
mm. The consequences when we're not connected with ourselves and then unable to connect and therefore unable to really connect with others, the consequences of that um, are the basis of probably a lot of suffering in general in the world, particularly because it's that break of the connection.
And then we take it out on each other or the people that we're supposed to love.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
powerful, powerful. I've got chills.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't expecting to feel the depth of that. But
Yeah.
this book, I know, just has so many gems that will continue to be revealed as I speak about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
one.
I had the same thing with my book. It was like after writing it, it was like I had to learn it, right? I had to learn
Mhm.
it. It took me to a whole other level. It's a joy of creativity, I think. So do you have any last other, I mean, that was huge, but is there any last words that you want to say before we close for today?
I just encourage you to pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, and see if they might be connected to some messages or beliefs that aren't yours.
Mm, thank you. That's so it's so concrete, something that we can actually do. So you can buy Empowered You on Amazon. Just look it up, Empowered You, Phyllis Ginsberg. Buy it. You'll be glad you did. I don't usually pitch, but I really want people to be able to see this book. I mean, especially if this is part of our path to inner and outer peace. So thank you so much, Phyllis, for joining me today for this talk, and I just really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, and what a gift that you're providing for your community.
Oh, thank you. All right, till next time, be well and let the chi flow. Bye-bye.